Again, welcome. Fantastic morning. So some of us are on the beach, some of us are by the fireside, some of us are just sitting at home in our rooms there. So you can envy Stella and myself. So, fantastic. Welcome to everybody, and looking forward to a great morning. So Lee, let's hand over to you and take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Great to see you all. We have been following, if I just go back a step or two, Stella shared her story, and out of that story, we looked at the theme of choices. And then we moved from there into looking at beliefs, and now we're looking at values. And we did an intellectual exercise yesterday, exploring what are values and so on, which I think is a really helpful foundation. Obviously, we haven't gone as far and as deep as we could, but the point of this gathering is always to bring it back, not always, but often to bring it back to the personal. And the reason for that is to make it practical. How does this apply? How does this impact me? How is this actually affecting how I think and how I live? And is there something that's triggering in my mind that I could be doing differently that will help me to grow and to develop and to get the kind of results that I want? It's not massive changes, but they're just little tweaks that we're looking for as we explore, and especially as we open our mind to what other people think and how other people's stories, because that especially will impact us, because if it's happened to them or if that's how they think, then maybe that could apply to me too. So today I'd like us to think about what are our values? And maybe just one or two, but how is that value changed, or how is that value being honed, or what behavior do I see in my life relating to that value? And Steve raised yesterday, I loved his zombie story. You know, when you're faced with an apocalypse, the worst possible case scenario is the greatest test of your values. And what foot do you put forward in those situations? So I haven't faced an apocalypse, I will admit, but I do want to tell one story of a decision, and it goes back to a decision that I made based on a story that I heard from a friend of mine at university. So the story is that this friend of mine, long story short, was very, very devastated. And we've spoken about beliefs and we've spoken about Father Christmas on this platform. So spoiler alert, my friend discovered his parents being Father Christmas. And he, as a young boy, was absolutely devastated. And in his mind, his parents had lied to him. So when I became a parent, not just because of that story, but because of my own values, I made it a choice that I would always tell my children the truth. And for me, that was fundamental to them trusting me, that no matter what other people said or whatever fake news, that wasn't a thing back then, but there was still this idea that maybe some people would tell them one thing, but I felt that they needed to know that there was one solid center, not one of my husband as well, but that there was this solid center that I would always tell them the truth. My 8-year-old daughter, who is a musical theater performer, so understand that she is a drama queen, and magic and all of those things are very, very important to her. 8 years old, her cousin told her there is no such thing as Father Christmas. So I'm sitting in the car with her, and she is tears pouring down her face, and she says, "Mom, is there Father Christmas?" I have a choice in this moment to dash this little girl's dreams and belief in this magical person that she absolutely loves, or to tell her the truth. And I decided in that moment to remain true to my beliefs and my value, and I told her the truth. It was one of the hardest things I can tell you I've ever done, because she was shattered. But, and I still don't know if, should I have kept that magic alive or not? I made a choice. And so it was the testing of my value in that moment, and hope. And I do know, my daughters know, I will always tell the truth no matter how hard it is. So that might be a long story to start off today, but I wanted just to give you an idea of that values are very real and they do get tested. And so not everybody might get a chance to share, but I would like to give those of you who got a story or something about your values and how they've worked out in your life, give you a chance to share now.
Great, thanks, Lee. I think you stunned everybody into silence here. You know, everybody thought Father Christmas was real. So anyway, we'll pick it up from there. So Luther, yeah, let's hear from you first, and then we'll go to Herman.
Yeah. Maybe just first a story. My first experience or true experience of values was I attended a training course some 10, 15 years ago, and the presenter there was did his doctorate on culture and values, and he took us through an exercise that all of the group had to list the 10 top values. Then he had to prioritize them 1 to 10. Then he started with anybody. He says, okay, Luther's value is honesty. Any one of you in the class have a problem with his value? None. And took the next person. He says, what is your value? Truthfulness. Class, has anybody got a problem with Ian's truthfulness? Nobody had a problem. He says in the 10 years he's offered this, he's still to find anybody having a problem with anybody else's value. That was an aha moment for me, to say, instead of judging in terms of race, creed, religion, whatever the case may be, let's agree on our common values, and we'll never differ from each other, because that's who we are.
Great, thanks, Luther. Some interesting insights there. Herman, let's go to you.
You know, I'm a very simply educated person, and so complicated words were not part of my vocabulary for a long time. Yet when I first heard the word authenticity and looked and really kind of immersed myself, I choose it as my, if you like, my first, my number one value. And for me, being authenticity means the way I am. In other words, my way of being, the way I speak, the way I act, and the way I live is congruent. And that is a value I'm unlikely to ever make compromises. And out of that, because for me it had such a high weight, I left corporate because eventually I couldn't be authentic anymore. I had to play political games, getting more and more senior. And the other difficult decision I had to make was closing a business, because a partner was really on such a role with dishonesty towards clients that I could not maintain my own authenticity and integrity. And I had to close the business. I put the company into liquidation. Thanks.
Thanks, Herman. Yeah, we get tested in those sort of situations, don't we? Ian, Cherry, you were looking to Yeah,
Morning, everyone. Yeah, while listening to Lee, I was interested because, of course, I was sort of thinking about how this situation came about in the first place. There was your beloved daughter believing in Father Christmas, and all of us as parents, we've had the same problem with smart young girls saying, "Hey, Dad, is there really Father Christmas?" And you get to the same conclusion that you have to tell them the truth. But there is this nagging doubt in the back of one's mind that they got there because I was telling them a lie. And I was actually telling them a lie for all this time, that there was a Father Christmas. And, and so, yeah, it was on that kind of thing I was thinking. And then when Luther was thinking here about how we all share values, I was thinking last night over what we said yesterday morning, and I was thinking about the case in which somebody said to you, I don't think we share beliefs. I mean, how would you feel if somebody actually said that to you? I feel we don't share beliefs. And then you sort of mulled over that and you went around the corner and you went to meet another friend, and then that friend, something had happened and they said to you, I don't think we share values. What would you feel the difference was, and how would you feel in each case? So thank you.
Great, thanks, Ian. Some nice questions. Steve, you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Simon. I was thinking a lot yesterday. Lee posed the question of internal values kind of in conflict with each other within the individual. And Luther made the comment just now that from the course that he attended, that people didn't disagree with values within the classroom environment. And I think that that's an easy space for that at some level. We can all agree to values on paper. It's when they actually have to be enacted that it gets difficult. And I was thinking about something that happened to me some years ago, which was really the reality for me, but internally. Two things that I hold very dear to me is being able to look at situations as truthfully as I'm able to, and to recognize reality for what it is. And also my desire not to give up on people, individuals that I'm investing in, and I highly value people's development. And I was faced with a situation some years ago where I had to chair a disciplinary hearing for a staff member, and then we had to fire that person. And I realized at the culmination of that hearing, what had happened was that those two values within me had been at war, that I wasn't willing to give up on that person and to stop trying to invest in them and see the best for their life. But eventually I had to admit to the reality of the situation was everyone else was keen for them to do the right thing, but they weren't. And so my desire to invest in them had to give way for my value at facing the reality of the situation. And I'm hoping in some ways there was a bit of a truce between the two, in that letting them go was a step of development in their direction, because then they would have had to face the reality of their life as well. But in the moment, that's what won out, and I had to give up the one for the other to some extent.
Great, thanks, Steve. Umpo, yes.
Morning, everyone. What happened to Mpumi now? I actually invited Mpumi today because of this particular topic. He is a colleague and a business partner and an amazing strategist. But there was, Mpumi, this is about you. Can you hear me? So there was a point in time where being a Black female was like the hottest thing in business. Everybody wanted to partner with you. And there were all sorts of offers on the table, you know. And one of those happened on a project that Mpumi and I were working on. And I remember him talking me down and talking about values. So, Mpumi, I want you to share this, what you said to me, with everyone when that moment happened, you know. And I think I was lost in the euphoria of what was happening, but he brought me back to values, and I would love for you to share that with everyone, Mpumi.
Great, thanks, Umpo. So, Mpulela, you've been introduced, and now you're on the spot. So, welcome this morning, and yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what Umpo has just said and the discussion in general. So, if you'll just unmute yourself, and then you can chat with us. The easiest way to unmute yourself is maybe just to press your spacebar if you're on a computer and just hold it down while you're talking, and then you can chat with us. Okay, seems to be struggling a little bit there to get going. So we'll come back to him in a moment. Maybe we just pop across to Stella in the meantime.
Morning, everybody. So Lee, sure, your story really touched me, and I felt so ashamed in myself because I've also been in a situation, not where my children has asked me directly, but where I withheld truth from them about my ex-husband. And it was a matter of conflicting values. I think it is in the one sense where you want to protect your children and not speak badly about another person, and in the other way, to be honest. Yeah, if you're in a conflict situation where your values are in conflict, it becomes very difficult. And I think that was also a big turning point for me when I left corporate, because it is exhausting to always have to defend your values and to be in conflict with other people that don't share the same values. And I think that is why when I left corporate, it was like, I can breathe again. So maybe I must get in contact with Steve. How do you actually manage it when your values are in conflict? So thank you for that.
Right, thanks, Stella. Nozipho, let's pop across to you and hear your thoughts on this.
Morning, everyone. Nice background, by the way, Evan and Stella. I like it. Did I miss a lesson on backgrounds? I'm loving it. I think I'm just thinking now as this conversation is going on, and you know, my late husband was an overseer of a church, and part of it involved, within the overseeing of the church, part of it involved reaching out, not just reaching out to the church community, but also when they have problems, they would have to come for counseling and whatever else. And in cases where it was couples that were having those issues, you know, obviously as the mom fundisi, I would have to be the one counseling the female, and he would be speaking more to the male, and then we would then sit with everyone together and sit together. And one of the things that always bothered me there was how, you know, we were encouraged to make sure that couples stay together and don't go through a divorce, no matter what the situation. So our church is about, it's making sure that, you know, you help them build that value and help them overcome problems. And I would always be conflicted in situations, for example, where I'm looking at the situation, I'm thinking I can never survive in this kind of situation. And at the same time, I need to be encouraging, not even encouraging, but more like speaking this woman and saying to her, you can't leave your marriage, like, you know, work on it and whatever else. And I'd always find myself conflicted in those situations with, you know, the value system of the church as opposed to my value system had always left me in a conflicted space. And I think I'm still, now I've come into a point where if I find myself conflicted and I'm not able to push my value system, then I would rather just not say anything at all in those circumstances, because I'm not find myself saying to the lady, I don't know what to say to you, purely because what the church values and what I value is in conflict here, and I don't want to work in the middle of that. So yeah, that's why I'm still working my way around my values. Thanks.
Right, thanks, Nzipho. Mpulelo, are you able to chat to us now? There we go.
I think so. Is everybody able to hear me? All right. Yeah, again, thank you very much to Mpho for inviting me to this. She told me and was raving about you guys yesterday. Yeah, to introduce myself, the name is Mpumelelo. And as she said, at some point, she was doing a certain business and it looked very promising and very interesting. But I had fortunately come across a similar type of example, so I knew exactly what was happening. But to speak of my own experience, again, I guess the values are mostly tested when it comes to business, especially when you're in a situation where it feels like you desperately need the funds, or you need the money because you know that without it, a lot of things will fall apart. And in our case, what had happened is we were getting a tender that we were told that we already have it. If we are to just give them a certain amount of money, it's absolutely ours. And my partner was so convinced that this is what we need to do. It's our time. It's our breakthrough. But it reminded me of the time when Christ was in the desert, that it's when he was hungry that he was asked to turn the stone to bread. That mostly values are tested when the need is very intense. That's when one needs to be very careful. And what encouraged me at that time is that immediately after the intensity of the testing of values, more often than not, the breakthrough lies on the other side. So yeah, there are many other examples, but I find that mostly it's when you're doing business and needing that check just to make sure that 2 or 3 months you'll be able to survive, but you know that the way in which you are to acquire that business is not in a correct way. There's a whole lot more I can share, but I guess for today, just to also everyone to have a chance, I think you could have that.
That's great, fantastic. Thanks, Mpulelo, and welcome again. Nice to have you here. Jennifer, let's go across to you.
First of all, I'd say it's really interesting listening to everybody. I came with something to say, and having listened to all of you, I'm not quite sure. A lot of what you've said has touched me from like at the beginning. You talked about authenticity and truth, and that is something that I really feel is important to me. You talked about the Father Christmas case, and I immediately thought of my son and what happened to him when he found out. He was so angry. And then he looked at me and he said, "And do you mean the tooth fairy isn't true either?" And what that actually led to was that I had a split marriage. So I was separated from my husband. And he used to tell lots of stories about his mum to my son when I wasn't there, but I used to tell the truth to my son. But what it actually realized was that my son, he got in this conflict between the pair of us. He didn't know what was true and what was false. And it took until he was 18 to realize what was happening. And that poor boy, he suffered. Yes, he was slightly OCD, but he got bullied at school and he really had a bad time. And you can go back to thinking something like, I mean, it's very interesting to say, because he just thought I lied. And he used to tell me, "Mum, you've lied." And I said, "That isn't a lie. It isn't what I've said." So I spent a lot of my time just, really trying to get him back. But I couldn't say who was right or wrong. He had to work it out for himself. And it wasn't until he was 18 that he worked it out. And now he says, "I love you, Mum. I love you, Mum." And I won't quite tell you what he said about his dad, but that it's all about this, this confliction and different sets of values. And my ex-husband had a completely different set of values to what I had. Yes, and hence the way I went one way and he went the other. But yeah, really interesting to hear you all. Thank you.
Great, thanks, thanks Jennifer, and thanks for those personal insights. I think it's often the toughest, but possibly the best, is to let people discover their own values and their own truths. You know, when we try and impart ours on them, it doesn't always have the best outcomes, does it? So I think what you did was extremely tough, but probably you're bearing the fruits of it now with your son coming back to you, which I think is fantastic. So well done on that one. Tsela, let's go across to you.
Morning, everybody. I'll just pick up a little bit from what Jennifer is saying in terms of, she just made me realize how when we are faced with those types of things, and everyone has been saying the same, when you are faced with the thing that challenges your values, I think that's more the key and the important part, because the values must be tested. And at some level or another, you must come to a stage where you say, I value this because, now I have a stronger because. And for me, my because, if I were to share just a little bit, so I have this chart. I'm sure you guys have heard me say with my groups, there's 5 things that I always ask them when they come in. Don't lie, don't complain, don't blame, don't grudge, don't gossip. Those are just 5 principles that we put on a chart. And I remember there's a young man that I didn't even necessarily lie to him, but I did lie to him. Because at the time we were sitting on around 34 guys that were washing cars for us. And money came in, but it wasn't enough for everybody. So some guys didn't get money. So somebody asked me a direct question and said to me, are we paid? Is the money in, dude? And I think I kept quiet and I held, I didn't really want to say. And that young man just pointed at the chart and he walked out of my office. And the regret that hit me after that, I mean, that's when a value is really tested. And for me, when I remember those things, and I remember that I have to stick to my guns. If I said to guys, we don't lie, we don't lie. Because if I get caught in a lie, it's even worse than if I did not make that promise in the first place. So for me, I'm coming in from that point of saying, those must be tested. The values must be tested so that we have a stronger because. This is why I value this. It is because of this.
Great, thanks, Tsela. Ben, I think it's your first time with us this morning. So if you're able, just unmute your mic and maybe quick introduction of how you got to us, and then your thoughts on the discussion so far. Ben Radebe, are you with us? If not, let me just move across to Ian Johnston, and we can come back to Ben in a moment or two if you're able, Ben.
Yeah, thanks. Interesting conversation. I'm just listening in on this one this morning. I agree with what most people have said. We often, our values are always put to the test. We're under pressure, whether it's financially or otherwise, and all guilty of making perhaps a decision based on the circumstances as opposed to our values. And when you're in a difficult situation, it's always a challenge to reflect in the moment and go back to what those core values are. So, you know, I mean, with children and Christmas, I mean, there's always a conflicting story, but you know, it's such a special moment for children, and you know, you want children to be children. So there's always 2 sides. So I know it's devastating, but you know, it's such a part of their lives that you get so much joy in watching them in those situations that it's you know, it's kind of it probably evolves into a situation where they inevitably heard from somebody at school, and there's always that moment of devastation, and then you pick it up from there. But for me, it's a magical moment for children. That's quite difficult to tell them the truth given the circumstances.
Right, thanks, Ian. Ben, I saw you managed to unmute your mic, so let's pop across to you, Ben.
Ian?
Yeah, we got you, Ben.
Yes, hi. No, I'm just listening in. My first time, obviously. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, so I'll just listen in, and yeah, I'll be coming back, you know, over the next couple of days as well.
Fantastic. Well, welcome, Ben. Pleased to have you on board, and yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts as you get into the discussions as we go forward. So, welcome. Let's go across to Bevan.
Superman.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Great discussion as usual. Yeah, for me, just a different tack on that in terms of being truthful to oneself. So, for example, we often have self-doubt. We say we're not big enough, we're not strong enough, we're not capable, or whatever. So I think it's being true to oneself is very important. And the truth often hurts in the short term, but I think in the long term, it's far better to be as truthful as you can to those around you, to your family, what you're capable of, what you're not capable of, and I think people will respect you more as a result. And people lie all the time. I know there's stats that talk about the fact that we all lie, so it's normal, and I think we just need to be conscious of that of ourselves, so that we're true to our values. And when we look in the mirror, we're truthful to say what we can and we can't do, and I think we will get further in life and in business, and our families will be more in sync. If a couple of people have touched on marriages and things, relationships, and I think it's one of the hardest things to look your spouse in the eye and say, this is the story, or that's the story. So really, really difficult to be truthful all the time, but I think it's a fascinating discussion. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Devin. Solomon, let's go across to you. Oh, Solomon, we're not hearing you. I see your mic is unmuted, but we're not hearing you at the moment. So while you work with that, let's go across to Cecile. I'll come back to you in a moment.
Hi, three things come to mind here when we talk about values and truth. Number one, which I think I may be wrong or may be right. One of them is when the traffic cops and bribing. Do we see that as part of our values, that I will not slip 5 cents into my ID if the cop asks me for my ID because I've broken the law in some way or not? That's the one thing. That's the little lies or the little bribes or the little whatever we try and tell ourselves it is. The second one is lockdown. All of us in this group are in a privileged position. We can get in our cars and drive across to where our other friends and family are and bullshit the cop if the cop stops you and tells you, and you can tell him that wherever you're going to. But is that part of your values to stay within the lockdown, within the rules? Because if we break the rules, then the 99.9% outside look at us and they say, well, we might as well break the rules as well. So I'm not sure if rules are part of values. And then, spoiler alert, here's an X-rated part coming again. Last Trevor, let me look at Trevor. When someone was saying about the disciplinary, when I was in, and I'd never even told you about that company that I worked for. I was in a big corporate company and I was a national sales manager for that corporate company. And we went, and there was I was divorced at that time, and there was a HR manager in our company that was married, but I think he was going through a rocky stage, but he was gorgeous. So we went to Malaysia for a sales conference, and him and I had a relationship while we were there. And it was obvious to some, but not very obvious. But when we got back, me being the national sales manager and he being the HR manager, during the time in Mauritius, in Malaysia, we spoke a lot about company stuff. And I don't know about phrases or whatever's going to happen when we get back to the office and stuff like that. So I shared with my team some of the stuff that he said. So the next thing, I was in a disciplinary and and they accused me of sharing confidential company information. And they also asked me, was I in a relationship with the guy? And then I had to make the choice. Am I going to say yes or no? And then he's in trouble as well. So I made the wrong choice. And I said, no, definitely not, to protect him. And in the end, they found me guilty for breaking company policy because, because of that. And I had the choice to be fired or leave. So I left. And it really affected my and my family. At that time, I was a single mom. It really affected our income, my everything badly. And I protected him, and he carried on. And later on he became one of the big shots in the company. And he never stood up for me once. Even during that disciplinary, he looked me straight in the eye. Whatever comes to you, some people are probably just bad. He looked me straight in the eye, and he said, no, we never had a relationship at all. And he never told me any of those things. And I lost my job because of trying to help someone else. But that's my story.
Thanks, Cecilia. It's tough in those situations. Folks, we have gone well past the bottom of the hour, but there are a few folk that haven't had a chat, so I'm going to try and get across to them quickly if we can. So Solomon, are you online able to chat to us?
Can you hear me now? Okay, so this is a very, very intense topic this morning. And I think for me, one of the most important thing at the moment in my life is to really, really stand firm in my values. Last year, I actually nearly lost my marriage. And when I come to that crossroad where I really was trying to decide where am I going from here, I realized that for many years, one of my main values was to really honor God. And so because of that, I made a decision that, you know what, I need to be moving forward, leaving just a good trail for my family for the future. And so it made me to really make a good decision because of that value. But the one strong value was the fact that I had relationships that were breathing such life and upliftment and confidence, and who I was really was. And that really empowered me to continue to say, okay, I'll actually continue to value relationships. And I'm so excited now that I'm part of this morning. It's because of all these values that I think I'm holding on to.
Great, thanks, Solomon. Let's pop across to Guy quickly. Then I think we'll go to Jeffrey and then Jasper, and then just wrap up with Trevor. So across to you, Guy.
Morning all. Just to the ladies, please excuse my French now, but I believe we all bullshit at different levels and at certain times, and that's just how it is. And I've realized over the past 5 or 6 weeks that I still have a bit of an ego, and does that affect one's values from time to time? Without a doubt. That's me personally. So yeah, it's always a testing time when you're with a bunch of people or who you think you have the same sort of values, but you don't, etc., etc. So yeah, we just got to accept that. I accept that I come across bullshit from time to time, and I might bullshit at different times for different reasons. And does that affect my values? I suppose it does, but I suppose even with silver hair, one's still growing and learning. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Guy. Jeffrey, across to you.
Yeah, morning, everyone. Yeah, values. Look, I don't really, it is quite an interesting topic. I mean, we all have different ideas. I just think at the end of the day, whatever values you have, they have to be your own. And you ultimately have to do your best to stick to them. Yes, like Guy was saying, occasionally we do say, sort of paint a slightly prettier picture. But I suppose that's just, you know, from a competitive edge, you know. At the end of the day, you know, when we're born, you know, we often end up having to have other people's values of sort of parents, teachers, and preachers that ultimately push their values and beliefs onto us. You know, if you consider when a little infant is born, it's infinite, it's a beautiful little thing. And then it's basically systematically buggered up by people pushing their values onto it. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, you just have to stick to your own values the best that you can. You know, be true to yourself. Yes, I suppose you can bullshit a bit, but as long as you kind of realize, okay, yeah, all right, maybe that wasn't quite. But at the end of the day, yeah, I suppose it's a bit of the competitive edge, like Guy was actually saying. So yeah, thanks very much. That's my few cents worth. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Trevor.
All right, so luckily some of you don't know me, but for the last 40 odd years, I've been known for brutal honesty, and that's purely because Mpumelelo, I've had the same sort of approaches, not once, but twice a year. My own business partner and partners have seen some of these things, have seen people come, and I've told them all, I've shown them the door. So Ivan will confirm that. But I learned very early on that, yes, Guy, most people are full of yes. They don't know who they are. They don't know where they want to go. And they want to advise you as to who you are and where you want to go. And I tell them, mate, you know what? Stuff off, man. And that's the brutal honesty. If it's rubbish, I'll tell you it's rubbish. If it's the truth, I'll tell you the truth. And a couple of people love me, a couple of people hate me, so what?
Thanks, Jeff. Right, Lee, I think quick wrap up, and then we must sign off for the morning.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the depth and the personal sharing. It's amazing to get a group of strangers together who experience the sense of safety to be able to share to that level, but it makes a real difference in the sense of how we can all grow. And I love what Jennifer's just said in terms of a growth mindset. And I think that's the spirit in which we come. And it's one of the values that we are inculcating here, is the importance of personal growth and in shared community. I would like to find out, Paul, where you are and how you would feel about sharing your story tomorrow. Is it too soon, or, you know, I'm just trying to be sensitive to your own energy levels. So,
yeah. No, I'm okay. My mom has been here. She is leaving today, but, you know, and I've been pulling a Cape Town every morning, you know, going onto the promenade, catching some beach.
Yeah. Good for the soul, good for the spirit. That's great stuff. Good for this body and soul. Okay, great. So then I'm going to our highlight event tomorrow will be Mpho's story. So thank you, Mpho, for being willing to do that. And so we'll hear a little bit from Mpho and learn and grow from her experience in life. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Good day. See you tomorrow. Cheers now.